don't listen to this alone in the dark. I got back from the camping trip just after midnight and brought all the gear straight down into my basement because I didn't want the smell of smoke and dirt in the house. And at the time, it still felt normal, just me being tired and wanting everything out of the way before I showered. So I carried the tent, the cooler, the duffel bag, and set them on the concrete floor under the single ceiling light that hums when it's been on too long. The trip itself had been fine until the last night when I woke up in the tent thinking someone was standing outside it. But when I unzipped the flap, there was nothing there except the trees and the dead fire pit. And I told myself it was just the wind moving through the branches. And I packed up early the next morning and didn't tell anyone about it because I didn't want to sound paranoid. Down in the basement, I unzipped the tent bag and started pulling the fabric out to hang it over the railing to dry. And that's when I smelled it again. Not just smoke, but something damp and sour, like wet soil that had been sitting too long. And I remember saying out loud, "It's just the tent," because I needed to hear something normal in that room. The light above me flickered once, just a quick dip in brightness, and I froze with the tent half unfolded in my hands, listening to the furnace in the corner kick on and off, trying to line up every sound with something I recognized. And when nothing else happened, I forced myself to keep moving, laying the tent flat on the floor so I could check for tears. That's when I noticed dirt on the inside, not along the bottom where it would make sense, but pressed into the inner wall of the tent like someone had pushed muddy hands against it from the inside. And I crouched there, staring at the prints, 5 long marks on each side, too narrow to be mine, and I felt my throat tighten. I remember whispering, "No, that's not right," because I knew I had slept alone in that tent the entire trip. I stood up too fast and hit my head on the low duct above me, and the pain snapped me back for a second, made everything feel physical and real. And I told myself I was just tired, that I probably brushed against the wall with dirty gloves and forgot. Then I heard something behind me. It was soft, like fabric sliding over concrete. I turned slowly, expecting to see the tent shifting because of how I laid it out, but the tent was still flat on the floor, and the sound came again, closer this time, near the bottom of the basement stairs that led up into the kitchen. The door at the top of those stairs was closed. I stared at it and said, "Who's there?" even though I already knew no one else was home. There was a pause that felt longer than it should have, and then I heard it breathe. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't rushed, just a steady inhale and exhale coming from the dark space beneath the stairs, where the shadows collect, because the light doesn't reach that corner fully. I took one step toward it before I could stop myself, and that's when it leaned forward into the light. It was tall enough that its head almost brushed the bottom of the staircase, its skin the same gray color as the concrete walls, stretched tight over a frame that looked too thin to hold itself up, and its arms hung down past its knees, fingers long and bent slightly at the ends, like they were always ready to curl around something. It didn't have hair, and its face was smooth, except for a mouth that looked like a split running too wide across where its features should have been. It was looking at me, not past me, at me. My legs felt weak, and I heard myself say, "You were in the tent," because the dirt on the inside of the fabric made sense now, in a way I didn't want it to. Its head tilted slightly, just enough to show that it understood what I had said. Then it stepped fully into the light. Its feet made no sound on the concrete. I backed up until I hit the workbench behind me, knocking over a toolbox that crashed to the floor, and the noise filled the room in a way that made everything feel more real, more immediate. I shouted, "Get out of my house!" and my voice cracked halfway through. It didn't rush me. It didn't need to. It just took another step forward, and the air in the basement felt heavier, like it was pressing against my chest, making it harder to breathe. I turned and ran for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, and I could hear it moving behind me now, Not fast, but steady, matching my pace without sounding like it was touching the ground. I grabbed the handle of the basement door and pulled. It didn't open. I knew I hadn't locked it. I twisted the handle harder and yelled, "Open!" as if that would make a difference. Behind me, I felt it stop at the bottom of the stairs. I didn't have to look to know it was there. The handle in my hand felt loose, like it wasn't connected to anything anymore. I turned slowly because I couldn't not look at it. It was closer now, standing halfway up the stairs, its long fingers gripping the railing, its head tilted again, studying me like I was something it had been waiting to examine up close. I said, "You followed me," and my voice barely came out. It moved one hand off the railing and reached toward the wall beside it. The basement light above us flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The only light left was the thin strip from under the kitchen door, and I could see its outline against that faint glow. Then that light went out too. The door behind me wasn't just stuck. It was gone. My back pressed against flat, cold concrete where the door should have been, and the stairs beneath its feet stretched longer than they should have, sinking down into darkness. I felt its hand close around my wrist, and its skin was dry and tight, like paper pulled over bone. It leaned in close enough that I could feel its breath against my face, and for a second I thought it was going to speak, but it didn't. It just held me there, making sure I understood that it had been with me long before I carried that tent into the house. The last thing I remember clearly is it pulling me backward down those stairs that kept extending, my heels scraping against concrete that didn't feel like my basement anymore, and the hum of the ceiling light returning somewhere far above me, like nothing had ever changed. If you're listening to this, it doesn't stay in the woods, and it doesn't stay where you first notice it. So if something felt wrong the last time you were alone in your house, it might already be closer than you think. If you have a horror story of your own, please feel free to drop it in the comment section. You never know, the next story could be yours. Subscribe to The Vault so you don't miss what comes next.